change my ordering around slightly. Okay, guys. I'll share my screen over here, and we can get started. Thanks, you guys, for joining monthly meeting. I think we sort of, I think we originally planned to have this at either the beginnings or the ends of months, and somehow here we are in the middle of June. So maybe I'll look at that in the calendar again. But nonetheless, we've got some updates this time. And so the structure that we have been using for this meeting has been to go around and talk about somebody's work in depth. And I realized that last time we didn't actually get anybody in depth, but it actually works out pretty well, because I think we've done a full rotation through the regular attendees of this meeting. And it turns out that there is actually a topic, a broader topic for like at the general level for the whole project, where this is, I think, appropriate to take a little bit of time to talk about that. And it comes to sort of collaboratively tracking milestones. Hi, Matteo. I'll paste the link to this agenda again. So we'll take that up as kind of our special topic here. And I know that I think Michael was going to only have 30 minutes or such when he got here for the meeting, and so Jim's here. Hi, Jim, for the moving validation update. And so anyway, so we'll get to that. But let me kind of give you the broader updates for everybody. So first is that we are doing a hackathon. Oh, also, hi, Port. We are doing a hackathon. It's coming up this Sunday for the neuron muscle channel modeling group. It will be led by Travis Jacobs, who's joining us here for the summer. Hi, Michael. Hi, Andre. Joining us here for the summer to do work in this space. So he has been organizing it in close collaboration with me. And as part of organizing it, it has led us to think about organizing in general for the project. So to some extent, what we'll be talking about here will be inspired by that. But it is on the OpenWorm calendar, and it is a hackathon that is, at the moment, intended just to be for this sort of sub-project. But of course, anybody's welcome to come in and have a look. We do have about 13 people that signed up on a poll, I believe, and I think at least 6 or 7 of those have confirmed that they will be available. So we will be taking the model that the movement validation folks started, which is to have a 4-hour session to start with a hangout, and to also heavily rely on chat, Gitter chat, I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be a good opportunity for folks that have kind of previously helped with the project, and then with the bandwidth reasons, we've been a little bit more disconnected, to kind of get back in and work on that. And so Travis has been focusing on getting an agenda and to have a sort of a collaborative roadmap for this, which partially he presented last time, and he's been working to flesh that out a little bit more, and I'll let him say more about what's happened in the last month since we got together when he gives his update down the road. But the idea for this hackathon is to not just have everybody do separate stuff, but also for folks who've been disconnected to kind of re-engage on tasks in a broader context of modeling on this side. So if you can't attend, that's okay. There will be a lot of activity on GitHub surely after we're all done. So there will be the products of it that will be available asynchronously for folks to check out. But if you can make it, even drop by for some portion of it. That would be awesome. And if you don't know where to go, or if you're not on the invite or whatever, just email Travis and he'll connect. Okay. Next update then. If there's any questions, guys, just break in. Next topic is so there was an open modeling collaboration meeting that happened in Geneva last week that I was invited to, and actually Porg was there as well. And so I presented OpenWorm there to that group, and it's probably the first most direct presentation of OpenWorm to like the HPP community, other than sort of talking about it via either the INCF or via Open Source Brain. It's the first chance I can remember that I directly got to talk about it directly to HPP folks, and that was cool. They were excited, both about the science, also about the open approach. I think this meeting was exploring ways in which HPP can do good on its mandate to collaborate with other groups. So I think it was a positive session. I think that it's part of a longer process, so there weren't any immediate takeaways, immediate things that were going to happen in the short term, but in the longer term, it is always nice to be kind of connecting with different groups that are out there and seeing what's possible. We did learn about some things that were helpful on the scientific side. One thing that we followed up on is that we learned that Channelpedia is going to be drastically expanded as soon as a paper comes out on that work. So there's a guy in Blue Brain Project who has been doing a lot of channel measurements and has a new paper that will come out soon, and that will come out through Channelpedia. And it's been a long time since that's been updated. So for the channel folks, that's cool. We also learned that there's another publication more on the Cortex side that's also going to come out, which will put out a lot of information and I think models for the cortical column, and that paper is in review as well. And so maybe of less direct interest to our science, but maybe more from just a perspective on shared modeling approaches or something that could be interesting. So the slides should be open there. You can feel free to look through what I presented, and if you have any questions or comments, let me know. But that's kind of what came out. Okay. Third point, exciting milestone. Thanks to the work of Mark Watts, who originally kicked it off, and Gopal Sarma, who's been helping us recently, and acutely, Travis Jacobs. We have finally merged the long-standing alpha 0.5 branch of PyOpenWorm into master, meaning that PyOpenWorm is now at 0.5. We have a couple things more to go to make sure that installs via pip. So we have to push the package out to pip so that you can do a pip install PyOpenWorm and get the latest. And we have to officially put out a release. But that's very exciting, and it couldn't come at a better time because we're really in a place where the management of data is becoming even more critical as there's more sub-projects that are consuming data about the worm. And so Travis and I were talking a bit about what this means for the future of other projects that consume information out of PyOpenWorm and where they need to go and what we need to have in there. And so some of the milestones that he's been building in collaboration with me to share with the community on Sunday are kind of related to that, and it involves both leveling up PyOpenWorm because even though it is now releasable, it is not perfect and it is not complete, and there's still a lot more that needs to be done with it. It is at least usable, and it is possible to integrate into other tools. So thanks to all those guys. Thank you particularly to Travis, who really put a lot of energy into it, even before Google Summer of Code, honestly. His Google Summer of Code into it, but he kind of took it over the finish line here last night. So bravo to that. And we even fixed the bugs that Porig ran into. So I noticed this morning. So I think it was very good. All right. Any comments? There's a lot of folks in the room now. Okay. So if you haven't played with PyOpenWorm, the idea is that it should be very easy to use. The documentation is all updated. You can see from the badges that are here up at the README. These should be fairly live. There is a Gitter chat for it. These docs, even though it says unknown version for some reason, I don't know why, do point out to recent docs. There is an actual auto-generated API in there. So you should actually, the API should be documented. It should have examples of how the different things work. And then there are examples which, as far as we can tell with our latest testing framework, these examples are actually under test. So they do actually, the library should actually return the answers that are given back in these examples. So as you go through it, have a play with it. Obviously, this only works if folks find bugs and file bugs. So so have a look. But yeah, so lots of cool stuff on the road ahead. But I think it's a very exciting milestone for us to cross. Okay, and then, so the last bit then, which is kind of going to this discussion section, which I wanted to entertain here, and again, I know Michael has to go, so maybe we try to fit it into 15 minutes. So I really do want this to be a discussion, not just a monologue here. So it kind of came out of trying to track milestones across all the things that Travis needs to manage here. And I'll just sort of break off this here for a minute and just kind of talk to you guys. So, OpenWorm has been an experiment, from the beginning, not only a scientific experiment, but also an experiment in open science and how we openly manage and collaborate on projects. And a lot of it originally came from the open source movement. And as I talk about when I present OpenWorm, it's kind of the cross-pollination of both a book called Producing Open Source Software and a book called Reinventing Discovery. And the first one is about open source, and the second one is about open science. And when the project first started, we were like, 6 or 7 guys on Skype, and it was relatively easy to manage kind of what everybody was doing. And in the early years or so of OpenWorm, I was trying to apply as much as possible a fairly rigorous, like agile methodology to what everybody was doing, a voluntary one, so to understand what everybody was kind of planning to do. And we did things in the context of releases in 6 months or so. And this is something I've discussed with several of you over time, is sort of what's happened to that process. Well, in the last year or so, in sort of release, what would have been release 5, 6, 7 or so, 8, the process has kind of fallen apart. And there's been a good deal of soul searching on my part to figure out why that is. And this has been kind of a volunteer project for everybody, and also for me. Having looked back on it now and seeing where the project has evolved to, I can realize that the reason that it was breaking down was it was breaking down at exactly the time that a lot more attention was coming into the project and a lot more contributors were coming into the project. And so there were a lot more people that were working with the project. And as the person who sort of took on the responsibility of talking to every new contributor that came into the project and trying to find a place for them, it just became increasingly unmanageable from my perspective to kind of keep this release process up. So we were kind of drowning for a while, and thankfully folks in the project sort of self-organized and stepped up to coordinate other people. And the first one was that Matteo took the leap into sort of organizing Geppetto, and he has made that into, I think, a model subproject that has its own pace, its own rhythm. It has lived up to the promise of releasing consistently almost every month. Within 4 or 5 weeks or so. It's a thriving community. Lots of great work is getting done there, and on the strength of that, we've been able to get as close as we have on WormSim. So that's been really great. And then a bit later, Jim and Michael came along and also self-organized and picked up and said, we're going to do movement validation, and we also are able to coordinate other folks to do that. And so now the movement validation sub-team also has its separate meetings, and this has been a very good thing. And now this summer, so talking to Travis and what he's wanted to do, it seemed to make sense that a lot of the one-on-one conversations that I was having with separate folks under muscle modeling and channel modeling and that kind of stuff kind of also needed to go under a sub-project and needed to be coordinated at a bit of a higher level. So now looking back on where we were when we had the 6 guys in the Skype channel and where we are now, where there's easily 30 or 40 folks spread across projects that are doing some kind of contribution, doing some sort of thing, it's obvious that I can't personally keep a track on every little detail of everything that's happening. So so we come around now back to, though, a challenge where at this level above the daily task, at the level above GitHub issues, I think we have a greater need to think about how that fits into the larger picture roadmap for building a simulated C. elegans. Because there's a lot of great stuff and activity getting done, but it's easy to kind of have a topic of organization, something going forward, and it's easy for us to kind of keep going kind of on autopilot without knowing if we're actually making a lot of progress towards that or making sure that our actions are as closely aligned to that as possible. So in light of that, and in kind of going through a process with Travis of organizing just the sub-project of muscle neuron stuff, and going through a lot of the old issues that have been getting stale, actually, on the OpenWorm project as things have migrated out to the separate subrepos, and sort of thinking about if there is a better way for us to take the coordinating activities of folks and unify them. So we've implemented a lot of great tools recently on top of GitHub. One of them has been Gitter, and I know not all of you necessarily use the Gitter chat, but those of you who do, I think have been seeing that it's been very productive for having a space where folks can talk. And folks want to talk more on the Gitter channel, I can see now, about certain things than they want to write up an email and post it to OpenWorm Discuss. So a channel per sort of sub-project is, I think, an important thing. We've also had Waffle, the Waffle boards, and it's been used, I think, most effectively by Matteo and Geppetto, and that's a practice that I think has been a very positive thing for Travis to be using as well, and I know that Movement Validation uses it as well. So, but the challenge for the one level above that is that Waffle boards do a good job of tracking tasks, and although you can do GitHub milestones under there, the organizing of milestones has kind of been, I think, the thing that has fallen the most short. The thing that's been hardest for me to coordinate, the thing that's been hardest for, I think, the sub-projects to kind of define kind of something that closes and terminates. So, okay, long description, but let me show you kind of the latest iteration and some thinking about this. And I really, this is not in any way a dogmatic presentation. This is an attempt to kind of hear your feedback and see what you think. Okay, so I was on a long flight back from Europe, and I was thinking about this coordination, so in addition to Waffle, I also use this tool called Trello for organizing things that aren't open source coding projects. And at the risk of introducing another tool, the thing is that like this is a tool that gets used a lot. A lot of people use it. I know that Matteo, myself, and Giovanni use this tool also for coordinating our other work. So so I thought about it, but I wanted to have it not be redundant with what was there. So something that would not in any way take away from Waffle, would not in any way take away from GitHub, and that kind of thing. And I got thinking about like this higher level of granularity. Okay, so bear with me for a moment. So this works similarly to Waffle in that there are different boards, but whereas board on Waffle is about like what issues are in the backlog, what things are up for to do, what things are in progress, and what things are done. I thought about what if we had a board that had an abstraction where it was only for milestones, and it basically was a way to reboot potentially the release process of thinking about what we're all doing at the level of 6 months, but it wouldn't be, number one, maintained just by me, and number two, it would have the lists would have a one-to-one mapping with projects that were being coordinated by folks, and the card would have a one-to-one mapping with a milestone. So the important thing about this is what it is not. This was not in any way intended to represent individual tasks. Rather, it was intended to represent at a glance view of the projects, which have to consist of more than a single task by definition, that are going on across the project. And the idea being that would it be possible for us to build a sort of an at-a-glance view in one picture of everything kind of at a high level that's going on across OpenWorm, so that there wouldn't be we wouldn't have to throw people to the wolves of looking at issues. I realized over the weekend, by the way, that that we've over the 45 GitHub repos that we have in OpenWorm, we have 45 repos now. Since we got onto GitHub, which I think was around 2012 or 2013, we have closed 900 issues. We've closed 900 issues, and we have currently open about 340 issues or so on GitHub. So the idea that anybody is going to go in there and like at a glance see what's going on is tricky. So they kind of have to at least sort of go into a sub-project, kind of start to get a sense of what's happening. And also a lot of the issues that we filed in OpenWorm are getting stale, and as they've been migrating and moving to other places. And so we don't want to do that. Obviously, presenting to a community stale milestones or confusing sets of issues is like not good. So it causes folks to like wonder if the project is being coordinated or organized at all, and it certainly is. But not having a single place to kind of wrap it all up, I think, has been problematic. So I'm going to go back to this here. So the feedback that I want to get from you, I'll sort of be quiet and listen to you, is what you might think about this. So far this is just basically an experiment that I played with a little bit, and Travis has been as well. Let me walk you through it a little bit. So the idea is that the first card at the top of the list is sort of wrapping up the project as a whole. So at the moment, I've been playing the role of coordinator for the project. So my email is in here. Then there's a link to documentation, in this case project-wide. There's a link to one waffle board that tries to wrap up everything that's happening, although we can say about whether that particular one has been very useful. There is a link to a specific chat for this topic, and then this one is the OpenWorm calendar. So this is just a place to kind of summarize that. Whereas, like the muscle neuron channel is coordinated by myself, Vahid, and Travis at the moment. There's a link to docs that are specific to this. There's a waffle board that's, again, specific to this work as a whole. This particular one, it does say channel worm, but it actually integrates across the whole thing, just sort of historical reasons why. And there's a specific chat, and then there's actually 3 different chats for this one, which is a bit of a weakness of this one. Then there's Geppetto. It's coordinated by Matteo. It has its docs. It has the waffle board. It has its chat. There's movement validation, coordinated by Michael, coordinated by Jim. It's got its docs. It's got its waffles. It's got its chat. And then as we go down here, so like let's look at an example milestone here. So we look at this one, and this one is implement PyOpenWorm's data model for channels and experiments. So the 2 links here that are important. Number 1, this links to and should be a one-to-one relationship with a specific milestone, right? Which is here in GitHub, and this milestone has issues that are associated with it. And then if you want to also see the issues, it links to the waffle board, and it shows the waffle board, and I kind of like this. It shows the waffle board so you can see the issues just filtering on that milestone. So wait for it, right here. So this is the waffle board, but it has, you can see for this very specific thing of implementing PyOpenWorm's data model for channels, it's got what's been done, it's what's on the backlog, and this I think is also much more manageable than when we generally looked at this board with everything in there. This is something that Matteo does, in his meetings, is he actually uses the filtering on milestones to see like what's happening, and not having done it as much before, it's sort of, I think things have sort of fallen down a little bit. But this is nice now because there's each card will bring you directly to the issues that are related to that kind of thing, and it's kind of readable. So it starts off with a prefix of which repo it's in, so you know what that is. So these are the channel worm ones. This list is a little long because there's multiple things. So down here there's PyOpenWorm milestones. So release alpha 0.5, which is almost done. We go to pip, for example, so you can see that at a glance. Muscle model, you can see the milestones here, in one place. There's some proposed neurotune ones that we're getting in, and then there's some C302 ones that are down here. Similarly, for movement validation, I've just gone and basically stolen the milestones that are, that are here, and again, one-to-one clicking in. We don't have the actual waffle board linked on these ones, but we should. So again, you can see it in a glance. Then, actually, this should be done over there. Sorry, that one's in the wrong place. Now, the only one that doesn't fit into this is Geppetto because it currently uses sprints, and so it's not descriptive, but it's a lot of stuff that's under there. There could be a way to work around that, but it might not need to. If you just link in anyway, it's going to go to the milestone, and then we can do the same thing to filter the waffle board, so you can at least see like what's going on. So this isn't intended to sort of create more work, but it's a way to do it. But what I like about this then is that there's no other place where you can see across 45 repos, or even a fraction of them here, like 50 repos or so. There's no way to see like where these things fit together. And okay, yeah, I'm getting reminded that that there are several other things actually that haven't fit under here yet for a little while. There's actually several different things that different folks that are working on, and so there's currently there's currently been this shift that's been happening in terms of where different pieces of the project kind of fit together. And it comes in terms of like building a. Here, let me stop a minute. Yeah. So there's 45 repos, and many of the repos are obviously not listed here. So one of the things about managing this project as we go forward is this question of what should qualify as organizing a subproject, and what does it mean to organize a subproject. And so the experiment so far, as I've been mentioning from Geppetto and movement validation, has been about having another meeting other than this one, where things get discussed, and there's a regular rhythm, and there's regular planning, and volunteers can fit under it. And I think it's the only way to make this project scale is if we set that standard for what should qualify as a sub-project that we can coordinate jointly. Otherwise, the only one who's actually managing the milestones ends up being me, and I can't. I can't manage all the milestones across all the sub-projects as this thing scales. I just can't do it. So So the question would be, if there are any of the other repos here, which I know folks are working on and folks have contributed to, that should be on this list. The question would be, can we raise the coordination of the code in those repos to the level of these other subprojects, where there is a standard meeting and there is a way in which milestones are being generated and there's a coordination of work. And if not, then maybe there could be like a big other pile of repos that aren't in that state that are worked on in a different way. But as I can say, this is kind of the way this has been worked on. So I said I would be quiet. So initial feedback ranging from this is a terrible idea to I'm not so sure about this idea to this is great, let's start using it. I'm not offended if that's not the answer, but thoughts?
Hey, Stephen, who do you think the audience for that Trello is? Like, I just imagine in my day-to-day workflow, I wouldn't need to see what the other projects are necessarily doing. So I sort of see that as being a tool for someone like you or someone who's trying to get a sense of the whole project. Do you imagine that as an entry point for people just starting the project and trying to decide where they want to contribute? Because it would be hard, I guess, to get that to be at a level of explanation where it was easy and accessible to someone who's just starting out. It really seems more like an executive dashboard for someone that is not familiar with the whole project right now, which is fine, but that's an interesting use.
Now the proposal would be, right now we have a link at the footer of openworm.org which points to milestones. And we say in our documentation as well, if you want to know what's going on in the project, check out our milestones. And the proposal would be to link to this board so that people who don't know anything about what's going on in OpenWorm would be able to see at a high level, number one, and be able to read text about what the milestones are. And then the purpose of those links is so that folks can get directly into the waffle board that now shows you a picture of where that milestone is.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I know that a few months ago, Movement Validation, we made an effort to organize all of our issues because we had lots and lots of issues, and to rationalize them into 4 milestones. So every issue is now bucketed into one of those 4 milestones. So that sort of lends itself pretty well to the structure that you have there. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
And to the other point of day-to-day, so yeah, the idea would actually be like day-to-day, you probably wouldn't have to worry about it. It'd be at this higher order of time, which in the past we proposed at about 6 months. Where every 6 months, see again, I've tried to sort of coordinate the next release, and the problem has just been that the amount of time that it's taken to kind of wrap my head back around what everybody's doing has been so large that then I kind of never do it. So this is, to some extent, an attempt to kind of get everybody to do that. If we got to that point where we said, okay, between June and December, movement validation plans to do X, you make your milestones on GitHub, we basically sync it with this picture, and then for 6 months, you don't have to worry about it until you get to some conclusion point on that thing, and it's like, okay, it's the end of the year now, so this milestone actually got done. We close the milestone on GitHub, we move the card to done. But in the intermediate of those 6 months, that milestone is real. It's like it's what we're actually doing, and other people can come and see that very clearly. And so it gives a trackable thing, and also at the end of that 6 months we can say we achieved these milestones. These other milestones maybe needed to get extended, which sometimes they do, into other stuff, and we go from there. So that's kind of the thinking with that.
Right. So as someone who is actually still trying to get his head around everything, that actually is very useful because what I've been doing so far has been basically just grabbing any thread I can get my hands on. So, for example, perhaps this waffle board was very useful, but very detailed at the same time. So, I was basically just picking up tasks that looked interesting. So, for example, the OpenWorm release that got my attention. And so, it's something I can do. Right? It's something I can just pick up from the GitHub repository and then check out and install. So, having something like that on Trello, and I do have an account on Trello, so that's very helpful. It's going to be very useful to people like myself, at least I think so. The one concern I have is maintenance. Is there a good way to have people do the milestones on, say, Waffle and stuff, and then some kind of a semi-automatic or automated way of updating this Trello board? Because getting each of the groups to actually manually, continually update this master board is actually going to be quite painful.
Yeah.
The trade-off is really the amount of time people have to put into this versus the usefulness that is for someone like me. I would like to see a more organized structure to what's happening, and then for me to decide which projects I want to put some time and effort into, and then eventually, and also it's a helpful place for, say, new project ideas. So things that don't get pinned anywhere could be a card on its own. So, for example, I'm thinking about looking at performance issues and how do we instrument every part of the project. And of course, that's not going to fit anywhere. And of course, it's not going to mature into a project until say if I do it, I have to get an idea of what everyone else is doing to figure out how things go, how things could get organized, and how useful the thing can be before it becomes a sub-project on its own, stuff like that.
Yep.
So yeah, so those are the concerns, the trade-offs, and from my perspective, a very useful project, a very useful component to the project.
Yep. So just to respond, yeah. So I think one of the major questions there is on updating it and keeping it in sync. And yeah, so making this board and seeing a way to have the links go in there. It is a little like keeping the right links. It takes about like 30 seconds a minute to create one of the cards. It's not like the most fun thing, and it did start to occur to myself and Travis that Trello and GitHub both have very good APIs. It probably wouldn't be that hard to write some script that just created this, or to use either services like Zapier or IFTTT maybe to do that. But I think the first point to discuss here is whether this much is something that we want to try to adopt now at all, and then we can talk about making it easier. But hopefully, and then the other thing you said was could this lead to the creation of new projects? I think this has been another problem, is that it's been hard for us to define how do we start a new project, what even defines a new project, how do we organize one? And so the hope would be that this is a tool now that we can, if we like this, if we can see what's happening across all the sub-projects at some higher level summary, and it's still about 30 cards or so, but it's better than 300 issues. Yeah, those kinds of conversations would start to come up, and it would start to prompt those kinds of discussions. And every 6 months, when we try to evaluate our progress for the last 6 months, we have something much more concrete to go on. Then, yeah, we close 300 issues, and I mean the way it's been before is I just look at 300 issues and figure out well what to highlight, and then I kind of and then I run out of time. So yeah, so good thoughts. It's nice to have actually the perspective of somebody who's relatively new to the project. I want to hear from other folks, though, who are less new. So, Jim and Matteo in particular, what do you guys think about this? Is this sort of at the level that you guys have been doing coordination.
Well, I had a thought. Is there some reason? I think it's a good idea. I'm just wondering why. Is this something that Trello does that Waffle.io does not do? Just wondering why we're using another tool outside of Waffle.
So the reason that I did it there is because it fits a bit better, I think, with some of the, I don't know, I guess, so strictly speaking, the reason I thought about it was because the waffle boards are from the level of lists to tasks, and I wanted something that would go from milestones to lists of tasks. So I wanted to basically do it a level of abstraction above. So I built it in a different tool to facilitate that. One interesting point, though, I guess, is so we've tried to keep things in the OpenWorm/OpenWorm repo that have, initially everything was in that one repo, and then we thought that didn't make sense, and we wanted to move all our issues down into the specific repo that it was responsible for, which was great, but then we started losing track of them, and then Waffle came around, and we could integrate across board, so that helped. I guess one reason to use Trello for milestones is because Trello is a different tool, and you have zero expectation that the cards represent tasks, at least in this project. The idea was to make it as a different thing. Oh yeah, another thing too, right? Yeah, well, although I guess you can customize the lists, but I guess I was thinking that the lists in Waffle were only like to do and doing and ready. But no, you can make them different as well. Okay, right. So to do what you're saying as a counter proposal, it could be interesting actually, is that in OpenWorm/OpenWorm we get rid of anything which is like an issue at a low level, and we say that any issue that's an OpenWorm/OpenWorm is going to be a quote-unquote milestone, even though we won't be using the GitHub quote-unquote milestone mechanism to do it. We'll be making an issue. And then you could make a board, like what you're saying, which where every issue is a card, but then under that, it's actually a milestone, and it maps one-to-one with a milestone somewhere else in the project. And actually, that's not a bad idea. It still has some of the same challenges of synchronizing, as the same challenges. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I just thought to make it in Trello first. That's a reasonable suggestion, actually.
Okay. I mean, I sort of I've heard that Trello and Waffle are kind of similar, but I mean, yeah, it's just something to think about. So
it does introduce slightly more friction to have a different tool. I get that. I guess somehow I was thinking it'd be harder to do it in Waffle, but now that you made me think about it, might not be that hard. We would have to clear out what's in OpenWorm now, so I guess that was kind of separate from that, because every card that's there now would need to go somewhere else. But we could do it. Other feedback?
I was about to suggest that for any kind of new. Oh, sorry, Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Okay. For any kind of new initiative like this, it's just a case of trying it out for a month or 2 months to see whether it would work. And it's good that both you and Travis can kind of try to maintain this, at least in this period, and especially if most sub-projects, for example, Geppetto, can just work with their own milestones and issues, and it automatically gets tracked there, or at least can be linked to from there, then it should work. But yeah, certainly if there is a possibility, though, of having just a single Waffle board where all of these could be tracked, then it's, as we say, one fewer tools to worry about. And yeah, so I mean, maybe just give a quick check again, see whether anything like that would be possible. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good idea to have one single place that's well maintained that people can just go to, drill deeper, and just get an overview of the project without being scared off by GitHub issues.
Okay. Theo, Jim, thoughts?
I'm still thinking. Can you hear me? Am I muted?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, I'm still thinking. So I think there is some good. I think it would be good to do this in Waffle, just to not have the barrier, unless we find a reason not to, something that is not possible to do on Trello, just because people are already using it. It's just another URL. It's like I think at some point in OpenWorm there were all the issues from all the other repository. I think that was not useful because it's just like, as you pointed out, it's just like looking for a needle in a haystack. It's just too much complexity. But having using the OpenWorm as the umbrella thing and trying to have columns per project, that might work out. I'm also I agree with Porig in the sense that it's something that we would have to try out somehow, as every time. I mean, all of these are experiments, because I'm slightly worried about what Chi was pointing out, the updating and whose job is to update this. It's like, I'm afraid it would be one of those things that everybody should do and nobody does, but that's a bigger question. And I was thinking. What I was thinking about was the premise of all of this. Basically, the pain that you were trying to solve, the problem that you were trying to solve. And you started from, it was easy when it was 6 of us. It got more difficult when it is 30, 40. There was the organization into sub-projects, and the sub-project seems to be doing reasonably well. And the sub-projects have their own separate meetings where they get organized, etc., etc. And I've been wondering here if one of the problems that we might have, and I don't know if that problem is necessarily solved just by a tool, is that this meeting has become a lot about the different sub-projects reporting. So, hey, Michael, what's happening in movement validation? Hey, Matteo, what's happening in Geppetto? So on. And this meeting is now happening once a month. So once a month we ask ourselves this question: hey, how is it going with Geppetto, etc., etc. And the integration, basically where the milestones comes from, is where you put together the efforts that happens in different sub-projects because of a greater goal that you're trying to achieve, which is finalized at the OpenWorm. And one thing that I think it's not happening as much, and I don't know if a waffle board will solve it, is basically a space where we actually talk about integration. It's like a space where, because every time this happens is a sort of a extraordinary event. Hey, Michael, we really need to get together because, you know, you've been doing a lot in movement validation, we've been doing a lot in Geppetto, and we should really get on the same page as to where we are. And when that happens is like, at the moment, there's no framework for an integration conversation. This meeting is not that these days. It's not an operative meetings in terms of, okay, what do we do here and there? It's more an update from everyone. So I don't know if such a board, that I think it would be good to have something at a glance. I think we need to pay attention not to duplicate information that is on the website or in the other documentation, because otherwise it gets even more confusing from people from the outside. So in general, I think something like this would be good, but I don't know if that would be the one solution to the more general problem that you were trying to solve, which might be, I don't know, maybe once a month, or according to people's availability, because it's like, as we know, there's a lot of time that has been taken by OpenWorm. But according to people's availability that want to be involved in integration, maybe that is a separate meeting or something like that. Because at the end of the day, tools won't work on their own. It's like scripts, yes, scripts can create cards, but at the end of the day, the real value is going to be if there will be some thinking, some actions, some talking, and deciding, okay, this should be the milestone, this should be that. While I think that that's one of the things that we kind of lost as it became bigger, and the sub-projects were great for the sub-project themselves, so to accelerate and to focus on what was happening there. But I think what is suffering is a bit of the integration. It's like every now and then we talk about it, but there's no real framework. You know what I'm saying? So that's my feedback.
Absolutely. No, it's a really good point. Yes. This is not intended to be the only solution. This is intended to be the start for a solution to that bigger problem, which is not solved by a tool. It is solved by a communication at a different level, and communication that has to some extent been harder to communicate. For me, talking with Travis about milestones and evaluating milestones and whether they were good or not, basically, because we identified there are definitely milestones that are not good. There are milestones that aren't clear enough about when something is finished, for example. And thinking through what that means actually led us to actually reevaluate it, but we couldn't really see it until we were specifically thinking about the topic of milestones. So there is another process which I've been thinking about, which is, you know, exactly the one that you're saying, which is the one where we sit down and we think about the project as a whole and where it needs to go, coordinated across sub-projects. This is intended to just be a first step so that everybody can at least be on the same page as to what it is that people have been doing. And it's a place where once we make those decisions, they can go, and they don't interfere with the process that's already going on, which is good in the sub-project, which you do not want to disturb, but it just allows, yeah, more crosstalk. So I think what we had been doing, and I thought was okay, was to pick the arbitrary amount of time, which is 6 months, and say every 6 months, you know, we have sessions that are specifically related to evaluating how we did with the last milestones and talking about the new milestones. And you know, we've done a little bit of this at different retreats that we've had, but I think as the group has gotten larger, I think those things probably also need to be infused with, you know, everybody, with sort of everybody in the community who can talk to them. And again, a tool like this would be necessary to do that, to get it outside of the heads of just the folks sort of at the top. So I think I totally take your point. I think that that this would need to be incorporated into a release meeting or set of meetings that we do. And I think, you know, if we can put up with doing it every 6 months and devote like a few days, you know, 2-hour meetings for a few days or something, 3-4 days, because it needs it, I think it would really help the project. I think where things are now is that we are a little unfocused sometimes at the higher level, although we're like getting good stuff done at the lower level. But how it all fits together and making some trade-offs at that level. So, good. Jim? You know, I think one of the reasons we haven't been responding to you is that I can't hear you. I don't think your microphone's actually working.
I was wondering even earlier, is Jim talking?
Yeah. Okay, he's going to fix it. We haven't been ignoring you. We just haven't been able to hear you. Okay, while Jim's fixing his stuff, does anybody else want to comment?
Hello?
Oh, people are dropping like flies.
Anyone there?
Yeah, but now we can hear you.
Woohoo!
But you kicked out 2 other people. No.
Yeah, it cost.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's poor yet.
I don't know. He just dropped.
Okay.
Hopefully he'll be back.
I was talking for like 30 seconds and he started talking and I was like, oh, okay, I'll just hold off on that then. So
yeah, sorry. Nobody's been trying to be rude. Now we can hear you.
That makes so much more sense now. I guess I gotta do a test at the beginning, not just wave hi.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have tons of ideas, and I think it was really good that Matteo went just earlier because he's taking it in a completely different direction than I was taking it, which I think is good. But I'll sort of address the differences. So to go, if I were to sum up one of the things that Matteo was talking about, would be integration, and how do we start to pull the pieces together. And I think one of the, I'll just add one of the comments that I've had from prior meetings is that I think, you know, maybe every couple of months, maybe every 3 months, or really, I guess the main point is, I've always felt like the meetings were too much of like, hey, I did this, and not enough of, I'm working on this, how does that fit in with what you're doing, and sort of big picture, everyone sitting around and getting the opportunity to actually talk about something rather than just sort of rattle off what they've been working on. So I think maybe if we rework our meetings to some sort, we could that would be something that would help with integration. But anyways, I think that's a fixable problem, and I'm not entirely sure if Trello is going to solve that problem. Maybe it'll help to some extent with organizing things, but I think it's a great point, and I think we need to work on it. And maybe thinking about how we organize the meetings will help with that. So I don't know if anyone wanted to comment on that, but I had a completely different direction that I was thinking about Trello that I could comment on as well.
Okay. I think this meeting every 3 months or something like that, or rethinking a bit this meeting so that we don't just, as you say, vomit our updates. We've been doing this, and we make it more of a working sort of session. But there's also the trade-off about what is the goal of the meeting, which is always the main question. It's like, is the goal of the meeting for somebody that is watching the project and once a month wants to go there, watch a video, and know what is going on? Or is the goal of the meeting, for us to solve actual problems? Because if we get to solve actual problems, I tell you, it's going to be the most boring 2 hours YouTube for anybody from the outside to watch. So I think that's a bit of the struggle. Is it a show or is it a working session? Because that's, I think that's the difference.
I think there's a way. I think there's a way to accomplish the goal of informing people without compromising our own process. And I think that it's great that this is archived, but I don't know. Honestly, it looks like we have 2 people on the stream. I think it's probably Giovanni and Michael. But I've never felt like we need to just do this meeting just so that people can see that something is happening. I think if it's effective. I think one of the challenges is we do have this emphasis on reporting in what's happening, and reporting on what's happening is important because if we didn't have that, I don't think we would ever know what was happening in the other parts of the project. So at a minimum, that there is some value to that. The problem is that those reports have been disconnected from a larger context where everybody in this room has one unified picture for what everybody is building toward. And I think it's been making it slightly less interesting because, when Matteo says, hey, there's a connectivity widget, and, Jim's like, why do we need a connectivity widget, right? But if we put it in the context of hey, that connectivity widget is going to probably end up in WormSim, right? And that's getting us to our larger goal of letting people analyze the worm, for example, and I'm just throwing something out there, right? Then that would be an intersection point, and then Jim could think about, I don't know, how that could relate to his stuff. But lacking that big picture and that context of knowing how every report leads to a plan is, I think, one of the challenges. So I do think just doing the reporting with 0 context has been hurting. So I certainly agree with that. But if we completely got rid of all the updating, I think we would suffer from a different problem, which is that then we just wouldn't know how progress is. So, and Chihuahua thinks this is a good, this is an important aspect of open science. Yes. Well, as you can see, this whole thing is an experiment as well in organizing. So, okay, but Jim, I actually want to hear what you were going to say about Trello and
So
responding to Matteo's point too. So.
Yeah, well, so I think I've covered most of that point, but it was just not the direction I was thinking about. The direction I was thinking about was more so towards people coming into the project and trying to understand what's going on. And I guess the thing that's not clear to me is what exactly are we trying to accomplish with that? I have a few ideas that are a bit out there, and I apologize that I haven't put them in a cohesive bit. But I will throw them out there, and feel free to comment after I'm done or interrupt. One is I think I really like this Gitter, right? Jitter. Anyways, regardless.
Gitter, I think, because it's GitHub and Gitter. So.
Gitter, yeah. Yeah, a GIF or a GIF.
It's not GitHub. It's definitely not GitHub.
Sorry. Anyways, I like that, but to me that seems seems like it's great for hey, I can't add A and B together and get C. I must be doing something silly. What's going on? That's the kind of thing that seems appropriate for that. What we've also seen on there are things like, hey, this seems interesting, but I don't exactly know what's going on, and I'm interested in doing this, and what do you think about that? And it seems like that's a bit of a disconnected conversation that people are coming and going, and it's interlaced with lots of other things. And I'm wondering if what we really need is a place. So an alternative to that is like an issue, but an issue to me seems to have like a high barrier of entry. Like if it's, hey, I'm trying to add A plus B and get C and it's not working, that could be an issue. But if someone is just like, I'm interested in these things and have you looked at this at all, that's not entirely clear to me that that's an issue that someone would necessarily start. So the question in my mind is, if someone is interested in these sort of things and wants to sort of know what's out there, is there a good place for putting this type of information and saying, so who's working on this? I'm interested in this, and maybe that's going back to the Google groups, or I don't know if we can have some place where we organize like bigger picture ideas that people just want to talk around a certain topic and then people can add to, and these could be organized a little bit better than the Google groups I think currently are. But that seems to be something that is missing, and it's not clear to me how Trello is going to help facilitate that aspect of people coming into the project.
That is the thing with any of these kind of things. It's not going to solve all problems. I mean, it's just, okay, it should be tried out for a certain amount of time to see if it solves one specific problem, the kind of top-level view of all of the different work tasks that are going on within the project. And I think it can be useful for that. But, I mean, there's lots of different media, lots of different ways for people to ask questions, lots of media for people to just dive in, and they won't always, no matter how you plan it, they won't always enter at the correct location and ask the question at the correct location. I think this is a very good opportunity, either on Trello or, if possible, or actually I'll look at it again. I don't know if it would be possible on Waffle, but just to have one place where there's a high-level overview that's linked and can be drilled down into the kind of ongoing tasks and ongoing code. And I think my personal idea would be to try it out for a month or 2 months, especially now that Travis has the obligation from Google is watching him, making sure that he contributes to this process, and let's just see if it works, see if it sticks, and if not, worst case scenario that we have an but it doesn't get updated. So
to that point, I just wanted to also say, Jim, the other thing that was happening on the flight when I was thinking about this this board was that I was updating the docs, which are probably 16 months out of date at least, the main docs.openworm.org, and I was realizing one of the weaknesses there was that we do have pages per project that are there, and that is a place where people can engage. But there's this section that I put in there for like what are the latest milestones, and those are all kind of hard coded, right, in Markdown, and as those evolve, like one of the challenges has been that I felt like it's been on my plate to basically me be the one to go and like update all those milestones kind of thing. So the idea of putting it on a board where it's like one card at a time, it like kind of tracks that a little bit better, was sort of the thinking. But in terms of like, the discussions you have, I think the way that I think about it is that like we have these different media, and each media is a tool, like in a Swiss Army knife, that solves a different problem. And so Gitter is probably the most real-time and the most immediate, but also is the least one of the less archived, because although it is technically in the chat, it's like good luck finding it if it was like a week ago. But at least it's there. The mailing list is slightly more, and then something is much more stable when it's like a concept that we have to keep referring back to, or like a frequently asked questions, like should go on the docs. I would also just remind everybody that Travis took the work to convert the docs from RST, which is a bit more of an obscure Markdown, into regular GitHub Markdown, which is now all the docs are in regular GitHub Markdown. So it should be a lot more approachable now for folks to edit it, and I would encourage folks to do that. Okay, yeah. So that's just another thought.
Yeah. So I should clarify. I should have started off by saying I completely agree with you guys. Trying this thing out, and it seems like a good approach for organizing the milestones. I guess I was coming at it from a third way then, besides milestone organization and everyone sort of being on the same page as how we're going to interact. It seemed to me, Stephen, like you sort of brought up the perspective of new users, and all I was really saying is it's not entirely clear to me that this is the biggest issue to solve. What new users are actually facing. That was all I was trying to say with
Yeah, yeah. Nope, I get that. And so you think so just to be clear then, so what do you think a bigger issue is? Is that like if they go to Gitter, it's not the right place, or we still don't quite have the right place, or for new users, or?
So frankly, I'm not entirely sure. As not a new user myself, I'm not entirely sure what the biggest issues are. But if I had to guess, one of them is just sort of some discussion around a bigger picture idea that I have, or is my issue of choice, as a new user fitting into the project. Where is that particular thing at? How do I bring this up, and how do people constructively feed back onto that? Has anyone else had that same idea before, and can I add my additional thoughts to that particular idea? And then can we take that information and eventually, bring it into a particular project or start a new project from that? And that's the one example I'm thinking of.
Off the top of my head, it sounds like the mailing list would be the place to start with that, because then you can ask everybody at the same time across the project. In theory, that should work. However, I think in practice, it's been harder to keep up with some of the issues on the list when they're very specific and tactical, and people read them and they're like, it's going to take me a good 45 minutes to respond to that. I'll do that later, and then later kind of never comes. Another mechanism is just, I generally do the first interview with any contributor who comes in, mostly, just because they come in through the website, and then I kind of get a meeting with them. So I try to do that sort of verbally, to kind of give people at least an overview, or just based on what they're saying, like kind of channel them into something. So also not maybe the perfect solution, but yeah, I kind of get what you're saying. I think there's nothing that replaces like one-on-one interaction. I mean, honestly, like some sort of one-on-one interaction with somebody who's knowledgeable, in the project. There's like, I don't know that there's any substitute for it. You're like, I have this thought, because it goes along with creating a connection with somebody, right? So like building some trust between a potential contributor and somebody who's there, so that you hear their opinion and you're like, oh, okay, I have some reasonable suspicion that this person knows at least enough about that part of the project to kind of give me a reasonable, response. But yeah, I agree. We probably haven't solved it. I'm just sort of free associating and thinking how we might solve it. I don't know, Chiwai, do you want to say anything, since you're again one of the new here?
So I wanted to give my perspective on like how I got into the thing. I did take a look at the mailing list, and then so there is that intimidation factor. So it took me a while to actually feel comfortable posting anything on the mailing list, mostly because I did not want to disrupt anybody's train of thought. Because, like you said, most of the posts on the list are about specific issues. So it's very hard for me to try to ask. So I had to think a lot about what I was trying to get into, and then try to ask the question very specifically. So in that context, it was after talking to you, Stephen, that I kind of figured out generally which kind of projects looked interesting, and then I downloaded the repository, tried it out, looked at it, and kind of thought about where things could go and directions I think it could take, and then asked the question. So there's like 3 or 4 steps before I could even get comfortable asking a question on the mailing list. So there's that, and yeah, talking to you was very helpful, because otherwise I would not even have known where to start looking at some of the material, even though it's actually clearly there. I felt kind of silly because after asking on the form, the web form that you guys put up for new contributors, I indicated that I couldn't quite figure out where I could wrap my head around everything, and then I went back to the OpenWorm web page and I said, "Oh, darn, it's all there." So yeah, it's kind of weird. It's there's due diligence on the part of new contributors, and then there's also like how do you quickly get them to get an idea of what to do. So that's just my experiences coming in.
Yeah. And, I'd be curious to hear Matteo say this, because I think Matteo does this really well, at least my observation, in terms of so somebody comes into the project and they have, some background. Everybody's going to come in with some different background, and I feel like Matteo somehow manages to find a way to engage somebody and sort of say, like, don't worry about the rest of the complexity. Just try this one thing.
I bribe them.
That's the secret. Yeah. This must have been very expensive for you, but okay.
Yeah, but it's working out, right?
Yeah.
It's there's no magic. There's no magic trick. There is like meetings, and it doesn't always work out. I mean, it starts with a. I think the easier thing is because people that end up on the Geppetto track, they're usually developers, so they enjoy writing code, and usually if they're there, it's because they either like front-end stuff with JavaScript, etc., or Java stuff. So there's a common framework already that you're talking, that you're using for the conversation. And then depending on where they are, you obviously need to have yourself a very good idea of a task, and you need to know yourself how you do it, how you would do it, so that you can explain how that would be done, and that gets people to the point that they can actually do it. Many times it works, sometimes it doesn't work out, but I think that also depends on who is trying to contributing, what kind of bandwidth do they really have, because it's like at the beginning when somebody comes to the project, usually they have a lot of energy, but like a week later they might get a new job, they might I don't know, find a girlfriend, whatever, and all of a sudden they don't have any more the time that they thought they were going to have. So it's like, but those problems you cannot solve them basically. I mean, it's as for every volunteering things, people, as long as they have time and capacity to volunteer, they will do it, and at some time they will stop doing it. But in general, yes, there is a one-on-one, and there is having cards that have details in terms of the implementations. So even on Geppetto, if you go there, you do not find the details for every cards, because it's like, I don't even know how many of them there are at this stage. But for that, it's like I try to use different columns. For instance, in the to-do column, the cards are a reasonable amount of details that can be worked at right off the bat, while some other ones in the backlog, it might be just the title, and then good luck figuring out what exactly needs to be done. So, but there is this process of adding detail, and it takes time. So I suppose the magic recipe is just time, but time costs energy and money. So.
Okay. All right. So just in the interest of time, we've taken this conversation, for a while. Although I think part of it has been saying that actually this is important because the standard updating for everybody has been opening up some gaps, basically, in understanding. So I think I'm glad we took as much time as we did to discuss this. Concrete actions for me is that I hear, number one, that that folks are willing to try this as an experiment. Folks are interested to see what this might look like on Waffle, and a comparison between Waffle and Trello to implement this mechanism. So I will volunteer to try it on the Waffle side as well and do a comparison. I will post the results on the mailing list for us to have a discussion about it on the mailing list. Relative strengths and weaknesses of doing this. I guess I'll probably open a new repo to do this, at least initially on the experiment stage, to do the Waffle side of it and see how it goes. And if we can keep it over there, then that's great. And then the second thing is to actually implement a process for discussing the milestones for real, which is the thing that we've been had lacking. And I don't think we got a concrete proposal for whether to make this meeting about that, have other meetings about that. We heard I sort of said 6 months. We also heard like a 3-month interval. So there's, I think, some more discussion to be had, which I would propose to have on the mailing list as well, about like what is the right time for that kind of thing, and we could get some interesting, responses from the community as well. I will frame that as a separate email as well, for us to just kind of discuss that. And I think, as a project that is an open project and all our tasks are open, I think our roadmap should be open as well. We've had growing pains basically up until this point, but for figuring out how to do that. Now I think we're at a place where we can actually think about that, and I don't know, maybe having these discussions as soon as next month, like in July, for what the next 6 months should look like, might be maybe a good time frame to at least restart that process of releases. So with that, we have 15 minutes left. I would propose that we try to do super fast updates across everybody of about 3 minutes each, and see if we can make it to the end of this. And to try to facilitate that, I will put a countdown timer, and I will just keep it here next to me like this. And when it dings, then we need to wrap it up. But we will try to see how quickly we can update this. I don't know. Maybe that'll be good for the future. Anyway, we pack everything into 15 minutes, and we have plenty of time to plan. Okay. So on the agenda, the first one, just because it was written up before, was movement validation. So, and Jim is here to report on that. So, 3 minutes, Jim.
Great. So, big picture, we've been working a lot on, on pre-features, and basically the idea is to support taking simulations from the community and putting them into our feature processing pipeline, and we've made significant progress on that. And we've also started to get help from Andre Brown's, I think it's Andre Brown, yeah, Andre Brown's lab. They've been contributing pretty significantly to that, which is great. One big issue, I think, with that for the group is while we can start taking simulations, we need simulations to take. So start thinking about that and where and when and how we're going to get them. We also, again, from the Brown Lab, had a little bit of work on expanding and adding additional features. The other thing, and I'm not sure I'm seeing it up here on our list, which I'll write in, is we're working on adding test cases, making sure that our unit tests and putting everything together with Travis CI, which has been a bit painful, but I think we're finally getting there, and is maybe something we could think about how we could support as a group, sharing best practices and whatnot. Anyways, I think that's about it. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Less than 3 minutes. All right, let's go on to. Let's do the major subproject first, I guess. So let's go on to Matteo.
Yeah. Very quickly, I linked to the Geppetto to the OpenWorm agenda, the Geppetto agenda. So if you want to just look at more details for what is happening, I suppose major update is that at the moment there is a big refactoring going on. There is a manager, there is a branch for every repository in Geppetto that is called Data Manager that will that basically adds functionality to work with experiments, and in each experiment, basically you decide different things that you want to do with the model. You run the simulations, you download the results of the simulation, you download the models, and basically there is a way for this to be persisted so that every user has its own simulations, etc., etc. The decision that we took at the last Geppetto meeting was to delay this release because basically all the development that happened in the past month is not in the development branch, but is in this data manager branch. So there's no point in like re-releasing the same thing that was released with the 0.2.3. So for 0.2.4, we are basically working all on making the data manager version stable, and that will be the next release of Geppetto. So that's my update.
Okay, great. And I just revised it on the agenda, by the way. The place where your stuff was down in the past stuff. For some reason, Michael broke this one up into past stuff. So So I just moved it up so that it's just under.
Okay. Cool.
Okay.
One thing, I suppose, we finally merged compression that was developed by David Frankel, so that is now in both development and the data manager branch. I just wanted to mention it because that issue has been there for like 3 years. So now there's compression communication between the server and the client.
And in layman's terms, the impact is that it should speed up Geppetto's experience greatly between, like, when you're using it on the browser. That's the
I think it'll be faster. Yeah.
You can make everything faster. Yeah. Okay, great. So 3 minutes update from Travis. Travis, are you ready to give an update? Okay, let's go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, so most of the stuff that I was going to talk about, Stephen already mentioned. That's the OpenWorm Alpha 0.5 finally getting merged into master. So that's a big thing for data management across projects that I'm dealing with. So the rest of the activity that's happened has mostly been in the ChannelWorm repo. We've got a web app online right now. So basically you can get on there, digitize a plot, and now we're working on exporting that data into OpenWorm. So having this Alpha 0.5 merge into master makes it more stable. So now we're actually able to build out an API and able to get that data from the literature, hopefully, and have something to build on channel models out of. You just want to make sure I'm mentioning everything. Gopal Sarma, that was in ChannelWorm, so we're using SawUnit there now, and we can compare a digitized IV curve from the literature to an IV curve from a simulated ion channel model. So this is basically the start of validating and making sure that what we're modeling in software actually represents the biological counterpart. So yeah, that's pretty exciting, I guess. Yeah. So I think that's mostly all I had to say.
Cool. And you're reminding me as well. We should post on the mailing list about things like the web app being up online. Once whatever that issue is fixed about deployment, we'll definitely post about OpenWorm when it's downloadable from pip. And I'd encourage anybody else when major things happening, like, let's put it out on the mailing list so that folks read it in text as well. Good. And if you can just write that into the agenda as well, just those points, just underneath there, that would be great for archiving purposes. Okay, let's go to Tom. Tom, what's new?
Okay, I can beat 3 minutes. Ha ha ha. Okay, 3 things. Number 1, got the paper published in neurocomputing. At some point I'll be published. So it was accepted. Number 2, I've been working with the DevoWorm folks, specifically Dick Gordon and a student that I'm kind of working with from University of Michigan. And we've kind of cooked up a project related to morphogenic fields, which are these biochemical signals that cells talk to each other with to form organs and things like that. So probably more in the future on that. And number 3, on Through the Wormhole, you were standing in one scene with a little trowel of dirt or soil. Was that soil supposedly suitable for C. elegans?
Yes, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So earlier we had been at the Salk Institute, and we talked to Shrikant Chalasani, who's a C. elegans scientist, and he was asked, like, where do you find C. elegans? Could you find them in the soil even here in San Diego? And he's like, yeah, you basically, maybe not exactly C. elegans, but some kind of nematode is actually in the soil, like, pretty much in every continent. So yeah.
It was a really good episode. So cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wish they would have said OpenWorm or.
Yeah, well, that would have been nice.
They're very anti-brand. If you watch it, they even cover up the brand of the car that I was driving. If you look really carefully, they taped over. You can't tell who makes the car. The logo is blanked out. So there wasn't much hope for us on that, but yeah. Okay. Good, done?
Yep.
Is there a link for the paper yet?
I can. I know there's no link, but I have a DOI, but it's not in there yet quite, but I can send that out.
When it is publicly available, please post on the mailing list. And,
Yeah, sure will.
great. Okay, Porig, 3 minutes.
Okay, I've done various small things in some of the things going on there, like OpenWorm and some of the channel modeling, but the main thing I've kind of been spending my own time on is the NeuroTune and getting that to work with C302. So now there are some examples in the C302 directory, which I just linked on the in the minutes, and also put in the chat there. But that will basically run some of the C302, allow you to change some of the parameters, allow you to tune the behavior of the network to target behavior. It's not very well documented. Some of the examples should run if you install NeuroTune and PyElectro, but hopefully once it's a bit more tuned, a bit more cleaned up, I'll get another naked announcement and get it working. But in general, NeuroTune is working with C302 and can adjust the parameters for changing the behavior of the worm. And that's it.
Great. One point I just wanted to make actually is I've been thinking about this NeuroTune stuff, and I've been thinking about BioNet, and I've been trying to think about if there is a connection point, and I know that Tom is doing some, doing some separate work now on the DB1 stuff. Great, and I'm glad that we're doing that. But when it comes to this optimization topic, I think NeuroTune is now becoming more mature, and some of the other optimization processes that you built into BioNet may become relevant again. So there might be an engagement point there, Tom, between your effort at the level of the whole worm, but at a coarse grain level, and what we're doing now at channels and cells. So maybe it's just an invitation to look into stuff a bit more. But I think there's a grand convergence between these things that I've wanted to kind of instigate for a while. Now I think we're maybe getting to a place where maybe after the summer there's a way to reintegrate that stuff. So
yeah, I plugged in C302 in a sort of hacky way a little bit, and I mean the engine just optimizes whatever variables you give it, so it doesn't particularly care which kind of neurons you use.
I think this will get more concrete in some of the channel muscle meetings as well. So we'll get into that. Okay, great. So with still under 3 minutes, very good. We will go next to Andre.
So guys, you remember that I'm interested in finding and reproducing.
Andre?
Oh. Can you hear me?
Yes, now yes. You were gone for a second. And you're gone again.
Is it possible to hear me?
You're coming in and out. Like we hear you for a few seconds and then you go away.
There you go.
And these are the seconds that we don't hear you.
Right, the internet is working awfully. I will try to be very brief. So I came across a very interesting and promising paper which tells about experimental research of one salience circuit of neurons, which includes one sensory neuron, a few of interneurons, a couple of muscles, and motor neurons. A lot of information is described in the paper. It was received by multiple experimental techniques.
Oh, and we lost you.
Sorry, it seems that again. Okay. So very nice data, and I started to reproduce it in the neuron environment. So I reproduce geometry. This is the head part of C. elegans. Geometry, diameters, form of axons, neurons, synaptic connections, and even muscles. Muscles will reproduce activity but not contract here in this model. I plan to finish it soon and very near future. I am almost complete.
Cool.
So the plan is to compare the results from experiment and results which I plan to get in the simulation and get simulation as much close.
Fun.
Andre.
And that's your number.
Hello.
So I think we got a good update. I guess I would say if that's closer to being finished in the next month or so, post it somewhere where we can all see it.
Yeah, no, that would be great to actually get hands on and just be able to play with that. So wherever you feel the need to post that, hopefully you can hear us. Do send it on, and I can definitely try it out, and would like to link it to what's coming out of C302 as well.
Okay, Chiwa is the only one who hasn't given an update, but we don't have 3 minutes for you. So will you be at the hackathon on Sunday?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, awesome. So let's save your update then for that, and because I want to get everybody else on time, or you can post on the mailing list. Yeah, okay. But thank you for all the feedback that you did give here earlier as well, and giving a perspective from the users is always very good. So we'll have a lot to talk about in a full 4 hours in the hackathon on Sunday. Again, if you aren't going and you feel like a Sunday is a good time to do some OpenWorm, let me know. But I will call the meeting to a close then today. We'll follow up on those next actions, and we'll talk to you guys in a month.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.